Welcome into my living room. Isn't this interesting that in our third week of virtual church, where everything's happening online, and the first week where we're bringing our messages from our homes because of the idea of sheltering in place, we have these moments where we are using technology and we're kind of coming into each other's homes. I've been seeing on Zoom meetings different people's pets, their cats and dogs, and the artwork that they have in their home. You can see behind me the way I decorate my living room or our living room with some of the things that I brought back from my 2 years of living in Japan in my early 20s. And so also thank you for welcoming me into your private space, wherever you are watching this. So here we are in this unusual, unprecedented time, and we are finding new ways to connect, and in some ways finding that we're closer in some ways by, as I said, being in each other's private space in these new ways. So I want to think about other ways that in these uncertain, troubling, painful times, we're also having new awakenings and new opportunities. I want to share with you a poem from my colleague, the Reverend Lynn Unger, who has been writing some phenomenal poetry through this time. She's always been a great poet, but these couple poems she's written during this time have really blown me away. This one I wanted to share is called Imagine. Imagine for a moment, don't worry, I'm not saying it's real. Imagine if you can that there has been not a calamity, but a great awakening. Pretend just for a moment that we all so loved our threatened earth that we stopped going on cruises, limited international flights, worked on cherishing the places where we already are. In this pretty fantasy, everyone who possibly can stopped commuting, spends the extra time with their kids and pets and gardens. We have the revelation that everyone needs health care, sick leave, steady work. It occurs to us that healthcare workers are heroes. Also, teachers, not to mention the artists of all kinds who teach us resilience and joy. Imagine, if you will, that we turned to our neighbors in mutual aid, trading eggs for milk, checking in on those who are elderly or alone. Imagine that each of us felt suddenly called to wonder. In this moment, what does the world need from me? What are my gifts? Yes, I know it's just a fantasy. The world would never change so radically overnight. But imagine. So here we are. In this moment, feels like we fell down a rabbit hole, or we're living in some episode of the Twilight Zone. And yet, this is real. Now, when we talk about what's real, we think about truth and what is the truth. And some people think we're living in a post-truth era, the era of truthiness, where what's true and what's a lie often depends on your perspective or your political persuasion. But we need truth in a time like this. A. Paul Davies said that the world is too dangerous for anything other than truth. Now, I don't want to go into a big philosophical discussion about truth from various philosophies. I want to talk about scientific truth, because this is a time when we have to trust the scientists and the doctors. I know not everybody is wanting to do that in this time, but it looks like most of us recognize that scientific truth is what we need to lean in on in a time like this. So what do we think about scientific truth as a way to orient our religious lives? It's something that Unitarian Universalists have considered a critical way of knowing our world and knowing what's real is the scientific method. And yet, science and reality often are filled with some cold, hard facts. And cold, hard facts are not always the easiest thing upon which to build one's life and spiritual life. We need more than science, even as science is what we need at a time like this. The grief that people are going through, the losses and the deaths, and I mean even the fact that people are dying and their families can't even be with them, hold their hands, surround them, sing to them, hold them. It's been happening. I mentioned earlier about Julia Richardson. Fortunately, one person was able to get in, Carmen Yannick, and she was just an angel and took some risks and covered herself up, but went in and at least did not let Julia be alone at the time of her passing. Many people have heard now that our executive director of worship, Pastor David Smith, his father, just passed away this week. And it was the same situation in that he was in the hospital and they would not let the family come in. And so they couldn't be with him. I mean, this is the cold, hard facts of life. And as I was thinking about this message and thinking about our 99th birthday or anniversary of All Souls as we celebrate today on Heritage Sunday each year, the Sunday closest to our anniversary, I went back to see if any of my predecessors had something to say that would help us in these times. And I found a sermon by the late Reverend Dr. John Burton Wolfe, our minister emeritus for so many years. And it was a sermon that he preached on October 5th, 1969. And it was titled, A Faith for Uncertain Times. And in it, he talked about the way that we have a faith tradition. Many of us have given up on the religious ways that we have come to see as fake or false or charades or filled with mistruths or superstition. And yet, when we are staring reality in the face, it can be really difficult. He asks why. Why is it so difficult? And he said, because often reality, I think he pretty much said, reality always doesn't turn out the way we expect it or want it to. He said, look at almost any experience. When you're young, you want to be old. And then you get old and doesn't quite work out the way, it's not all that it was cracked up to be, is it? We get married and we're looking forward to living happily ever after. And yet, is that how your marriage has turned out exactly as you expected it? You put on the uniform and you go to serve your country in glory, or you become a lawyer and you pass the bar and you're ready to go into the courts to be a proponent of justice, or you become a teacher or a doctor or a nurse. Like in these times, it's not what you wanted or expected. So much of life turns out that way, and when it does, we need our imagination. We are creatures that need more than just the facts, more than just science, but we're creatures that dream. We're creatures that imagine, and we have yearnings and longings. I was thinking this week about Anne Frank.